Hello, baby. Hello. Bye-bye. Okay. Oh, good morning. Welcome. So weird thing. I think I put my dice away last week. Or I have different dice this week. I found them. I think I did. I don't remember, but I think the purple one was one of them. So I think we're ready. Welcome to Flashback Friday. Here's a little insight into my life. Last Friday was my niece's 13th birthday, so I totally did not roll 13. I made 13 happen. It was interesting, not going very far back in time though. I'm sort of, I'm not bummed that we've got mostly like close to 100 or closer to 100 on my D100 here, but I would be more interested. I would be interested in more variety. Is what I'm looking for. So on my post, I did say that I had had my coffee already, and that's false. I had had 2 sips of my coffee, so this is still happening. But let's just get right down to it. We don't need to wait. We're burning daylight out here. Come on. All right. Okay. So I wanted something variety. Something maybe not as close to 100 as I've gotten, but that's not an option right now. So 85. 85. Okay. So 85. Let's see if I can do the math. It should be easy, right? It should be like, what, 1945? 2020 minus 85 equals 1935. Dang it. Oh, right, because 20, not 25. Okay, well, you know what? 1935, whatever. We're still in World War II. So let's figure this out. Let's go to, okay, I need to leave this open. Here we go. Okay, I'm struggling with my windows, but I got my windows open now. Wikipedia.org, 1935. Now, so in the main year one, they have significant dates. When you go into the month, they do every date. So let's see if there's anything significant about today. Today is the 22nd. No. I'm glad we missed the 21st though, because that was a big thing with the Nazis, and I'm okay not talking about the Nazis. I'm fine with that. So let's go to the month. We'll go May 22nd. It was a Wednesday. Stanley Baldwin, admitting that Britain faced a time of emergency, told the House of Commons that the Royal Air Force would be tripled in size over the next 2 years to give it 1,500 aircraft by 1937, the same number that Germany said it intended. Wow. The same number that Germany said it intended to have. Baldwin acknowledged Hitler's speech of the previous day by saying its proposals would receive the fullest and fairest consideration. It was in violation of Treaty of Versailles, though. So the fullest and fairest consideration. I mean, whatever. I don't want to go into that Nazi stuff for a second. President Roosevelt vetoed the Patman bonus bill. The president appeared before the House and gave his reasons for doing so, warned that it invited an ultimate reckoning in uncontrollable prices and the destruction of the value of savings that will strike most cruelly those like the veterans who seem to be temporarily benefited. The House then voted to override the presidential veto, 322 to 98, and sending it back to the Senate. Germany called up all able-bodied males born in 1914 and 15, so they would be 20 and 21, for medical examination starting June 1st for military service, beginning November 1st. So the Wehrmacht, I think it just means military. But I think it's specifically like the draft in Germany. Barry Rogers was born. He's a salsa musician and jazz fusion trombonist. Born in the Bronx and he died in 1991. I was like, he was born in anywhere? No. He was born in the Bronx on May 22nd, 1935, and died in 1991. So let's look at this Patman bonus bill, because I want to know. Inquiring minds want to know what the Patman bonus bill was. We haven't completely decided whether, we haven't decided, not desired. See, coffee's still coming. We haven't completely decided whether or not this is what we're going to study today in Flashback Friday, but it is going to be something to look at. So the Adjusted Compensation Payment Act was a piece of United States legislation that provided for the issuance of U.S. Treasury bonds to veterans who had served in World War I as a form of economic stimulus relief. It was sometimes considered part of the deal, but it was not supported by the president. And it was one of several pieces of the United States legislation popularly known together as the Bonus Act. So, sorry, I'm distracted. By reading. The House overrode a veto, and then the Senate sustained the veto. Okay. And then they sent another version of the bill to him the next year. And then the Senate overrode that veto. He just was vetoing that. He would not have it. So the act replaced the service certificates awarded to veterans under the World War Adjusted Compensation. The bonds issued by the Treasury Department. So service certificates. The bonds paid interest at an annual rate of 3%, higher than rates available to savings accounts. And this is after 1929. So, well, yes, obviously, due to the New Deal and stuff. Most veterans redeemed their bonds promptly. Okay, they could not be sold, but they could be redeemed for cash after June 15th. So they would be, when was this enacted? So they got 6 months-ish. They constituted an efficient economic stimulus since the program required little government administration. The monies were likely to be spent without delay, and the entire process did not require a long lead time of a public work program. Well, that is interesting. The concept of selling bonds, or like awarding bonds, as opposed to like giving stimulus checks like we're doing now. So wanted to know, no, that's not what I wanted to look up. I wanted to look up what what the service certificates were. So, okay. They were given credit based on how many days they served either in the United States or abroad. So they were given $1 for each day served in the U.S. and $1.25 for each day served abroad during World War I between April 5th, 1917 and July 1st, 1919. Maximum payments were $500, approximately $7,250 in 2018, for a veteran who served stateside, and $625 for a veteran who served overseas. Most officers and anyone whose service began after November 11th, 1918, which was after the war was over, were excluded. Authorized immediate payments to anyone due less than $50. The estate of a deceased veteran could be paid his award immediately if the amount was less than $500. And then all others were awarded adjusted service certificates, which function like an insurance policy. Based on the standard actuarial calculations, the value of a veteran certificate is the value of 20 policy equal to 125% of the value of a service credit. Certificates were to be awarded on the veteran's birthday no earlier than January 1st, 1925, and redeemable on his full birthday in 1945, with payments to his estate if he died before then. Certificate holders were allowed to use them as collateral for loans under certain restrictions. Interesting. So that seems very complicated. That seems very complicated, and it also seems like most people did not get paid until 20 years later, or were not set to get paid until 20 years later. But then this new act in 10 years later was like, no, that's weird. Also, we need the money now. Also, people need it now. We can't wait this 10 extra years thing. So I'm interested to know why we had this original World War Adjusted Compensation Act, or Bonus Act. Was it because people were frustrated with how little they were compensated already? Okay, so yeah. So they had not been paid fully. According to the American Legion, did not like that it was called a bonus because they had not been fully paid. So a bonus cannot be an addition to the payment that they never received. Yeah, so national ingratitude and injustice. Yeah, so the Wilson administration had made additional payments to government workers during the war to help offset the effects of inflation, but did not make any comparable provisions for members of the military. Okay. So it started as a hybrid between payments, just straight up paying people, and setting up a pension system. This is under Harding, President Warren Harding. Harding is one of those presidents where it's like, whenever I hear his name, I'm like, oh yeah, President Warren G. Harding. And like, I just know his whole name, but there's this picture of him on this page, and I'm like, who's that guy? And also, like, if you try to have me name presidents, he's definitely not one of the ones I remember. I think that's probably most of the presidents. You know what? Just for kicks, because this is not exactly the most thrilling. Oh my goodness. Calvin Coolidge vetoed a bill granting bonuses to veterans of World War I, saying patriotism bought and paid for is not patriotism. If we pay them, they didn't do it because they love us. That grinds my gears, as they say. You shouldn't be paid for work that you did because you thought it was the right thing to do. You should only be paid for work that you don't want to do. Cool. All right. Let's look at the list of presidents. U.S. presidents. Well, let's go in opposite order of what I want, but okay. What else doesn't go all the way to the end? Come on. Okay, whatever. I'm doing a Wikipedia page, I guess. Let's try to avoid it. But. Okay. George Washington, obviously. John Adams. I know it from Hamilton. Thomas Jefferson, obviously. James Madison. James Monroe, I did a project on him in 6th grade, so I remember him. John Quincy Adams, knew he existed, didn't know where he was. Andrew Jackson, of course, unfortunately. Martin Van Buren. He's definitely one of those guys like, oh yeah, he was a president. William Henry Harrison, wasn't he the one who died? Yes, he was the one who died. I can never remember his name, but he's the guy who got sick, giving his inaugural address in the rain, and then died a month later. So that's fun. And then John Tyler must have been his, John Tyler was his vice president, so became president. What a job. James Polk. John Tyler, he was president for 4 years. I would not have recognized that guy as the president. James K. Polk. I mean, I know the name Polk. Was he Texan? Because we got a lot of things named Polk down here. Tennessee. Yeah. Then Zachary Taylor. His picture looks great, by the way. Google that. Millard Fillmore. Great name. And I think at one point in my life I knew that he was a president, but I would not have been able to pick that one out of that. Franklin Pierce. Did not know. Genuinely did not know him. James Buchanan. He's a name. Abraham Lincoln. Duh. Andrew Johnson. Yeah? Wasn't he the one who got... What was his deal? Andrew Johnson. So he was the vice president of Abraham Lincoln. Yeah, he was impeached. There we go. He was one of the 3 presidents who's ever been impeached. I'm okay. I just swallowed coffee in the incorrect way. And now I say. All right. Ulysses S. Grant. Yeah. Of course I remember him. I sound like I'm so sad. I'm so sad, everybody. Rutherford B. Hayes. Yep, I know that name. And these were the people during the Industrial Revolution. Garfield. And then Chester Arthur. Oh, he also didn't serve. Garfield did not serve a very long presidency. Oh, he was assassinated. Oops. Interesting. I didn't know that. And then Chester Arthur. Grover Cleveland. Of course, I know his name. Benjamin Harrison. Maybe. Grover Cleveland. I don't recognize that guy. William McKinley. Yep. I know him because we named Mount McKinley after him, but he was still alive. That's whack. We don't do that. So I think we unnamed Mount McKinley after him recently. So that's nice. Theodore Roosevelt. William Howard Taft. Yes. Fun fact about William Howard Taft. He was also a Supreme Court justice. I don't know that he was he might have been the Chief Justice at some point, but that was after he became president and like later. He wasn't president and chief justice at the same time, but he much preferred being Supreme Court justice. He did not like being president. Woodrow Wilson, yep, know him. Warren G. Harding, there's our man. Calvin Coolidge, there he is. Herbert Hoover, yep. Franklin D. Roosevelt, yes. Harry Truman, yes. Dwight D. Eisenhower, yes. John F. Kennedy, yes. Lyndon B. Johnson, yes. Richard Nixon, yes. Gerald Ford, yes. Jimmy Carter, yes. Ronald Reagan, yes. George the First, yes. Bill Clinton, George II, yes. Barack Obama, yes. And then there's just President background. That's weird. I don't know. Weird. So yeah, it's mostly the people between Abraham Lincoln and FDR that I struggle with. There's a couple in there, obviously. A Roosevelt, a Grant, Wilson. Those types that stick out in history, mostly because of the times that they were president during, which I suppose is fair. Like Washington, he's famous because he was the first president. Abraham Lincoln was famous. Well, he was famous because of the Emancipation Proclamation, but he was famous because he was president during the Civil War. And so these things are things that sort of happen to presidents as opposed to things that they do. I mean, their reaction is important, but they become famous because of other factors than just themselves. And so these other guys, they were just things that were going on were not interesting on scale at that time. So we don't remember them as well. And by we, I do mean me. Maybe you remember them. Anyway, so I'm also interested to see, so this was, to this day in history, was the day that FDR gave a speech vetoing the bonus bill. There's a citation here. Let me see if there is more information as to why. Oh boy. Bonus bill. And veto. Or Hoover, and Johnson, Gerald Ford. Wait, what? They just skip over FDR. Oh, you know, I bet it is bonus bill. Wrong one. All right. See, this is why you don't make things case sensitive, because I don't know what you were looking for. Let's look. Recognition. Veto of the bonus bill. Let us just copy this text. Copy the text. I don't want to copy the link. I want to copy the text. Okay. This is done. Veto of the bonus bill. Okay. Bonus bill. Bonus. Veto. FDR. FDR. Where are you? Oh. Come on. What? Okay. Veto. Veto bonus bill. I'm very bad at using this search function, evidently. So let's go to, I don't have the date that I'm looking for. Okay, we'll go veto and we'll say 5/22, 1935. Oh, they don't want me to do that. What? Oh, they want me to use dashes instead of. Okay. Apply. Come on. What is this? You say it exists, but it doesn't. This, kids, is why research is hard. I don't understand. Maybe they just don't have it anymore because when I click on the link, it just does not say what I assume the citer thought it said. Okay, so what I'm going to do instead is highlight the name of the guys who wrote it, names of the guys who wrote it, and the title. And we will Google it. And Google will get us, Google got us to the right place because their search function works better. Okay. Okay, so this is his speech. I've never doubted the good faith lying behind the reasons which have caused them and the majority of Congress to advocate this bill. In the same spirit, I come before you dispassionately and in good faith to give you, as simply as I can, the reasons which compel me to give it my disapproval. This is an interesting speech. It was evidently weird that he came by himself, or came himself, as opposed to sending a courier or sending someone else to give a speech for him. So he addresses that in his speech. 18 years ago, the United States engaged in the World War. Wasn't it a beautiful time when we thought there was only one of them? Out of this vast army, consisting of the whole working population of the nation. So he was saying, like, a nation of 120 million people was united in the purpose of victory. They did things like agriculture and raw materials and industry and other things. So he's saying everybody was working on this together, not just the people who went to war. So out of this vast army consisting of the whole working population of the nation, 4 3/4 million men volunteered or were drafted into the armed forces of the United States. 1/2 of them remained within our armed or American subcontinental limits. The other half served overseas, and of these, 1,400,000 saw service in actual combat. I don't know if he's like downplaying it. That's what it sounds like it is. The people in the government of the United States have shown a proper and generous regard for the sacrifices and patriotism of all of the 4 3/4 million men who were in uniform, no matter where they served. Okay, so he is extolling the idea of an insurance policy. Within the lines of this policy, the President and Congress have fully recognized that those who serve in uniform deserve certain benefits to which other citizens of the Republic were not entitled, and in which they could not participate. So he's saying it made sense that they got these things that other people didn't get. at the time. And so we gave the veterans many benefits. During the war itself, a provision was made for government allowances for the families and other dependents of enlisted men in service. Disability and death compensation was provided for casualties in the line of duty. So he's just listing off the things that we did for veterans during and after the war. Veteran preference in the United States Civil Service and in selection of employees under the Public Works Administration. Furthermore, just going on. We may measure the benefits extended from the fact that has been expanded up to the end of the last fiscal year more than, that's a big number, $7,800,000,000,000 for these items in behalf of veterans of the World War, not including some spent for home or work relief. This is a sum equal to more than 3 of the entire cost of our participation in the World War, and 10 years from now, most of the veterans of that war will be barely past the half-century mark. Basically, he's saying, we've given them a lot so far. If we give them any more, these people are young, they're going to just bleed us, suck us dry. And payments have been and are only being made to veterans of the World War and their dependents, not to civilian workers who helped to win that war. The settlement provided for adjustment and compensation during service by an additional allowance per day for actual service rendered because cash payment was not to be made immediately. This basic allowance was increased by 25%. There's just a lot of numbers in here. Okay, so then he goes on to an example, using lots of numbers. The bill before me provides for the immediate payment of the 1945 value of the certificates. It means paying $1,600,000,000,000 more than the present value of certificates. It requires an expenditure of more than $2 trillion in cash for this purpose. It directs payments to the veterans of a much larger sum than was contemplated in the 1924 settlement. It is nothing less than a complete abandonment of that settlement. Well, that seems about right. It is a new straight gratuity or bounty to the amount of $2 trillion. I count the zeros every time I read trillion. It destroys the insurance protection for the dependents of the veterans provided in the original plan. For the remaining period of 10 years, they will have lost this insurance. This proposal, I submit, violates the entire principle of veterans benefits so carefully formulated at the time of war, and also the entire principle of the adjusted certificate settlement of 1924. What are the reasons presented in this bill for this fundamental change in policy? Forth with care in a number of whereas clauses at the beginning of the bill. That's typical for bills. The first of these states a reason for the cash payment of these certificates at this time, that it will increase the purchasing power of millions of the consuming public, that it will provide relief for many who are in need because of economic conditions, and that it will lighten the relief burden of cities, counties, and states. The second states that payment will not create any additional debt. The third states that payments now will be an effective method of spending money to hasten recovery. These are the enacted reasons for the passage of this bill. Then he analyzes them, as it would result in expansion of trade, retail trade, but it must be noted that retail trade has already expanded to a condition that compares favorably with conditions before the Depression. So maybe that's not what we're looking for right now. The next reason is that it will provide relief for many who are in need because of economic conditions. Congress has just passed an act to provide work relief for such citizens. Some veterans are on the relief rolls, though relatively not nearly so many as the case with non-veterans. Assume, however, that such a veteran served in the United States or overseas during the war, that he came through in fine physical shape, as most of them did, that he received an honorable discharge, and that he is today 38 years old and in full possession of his faculties and health. That, like several million other Americans, he is receiving from his government relief and assistance in one of many forms. I hold that able-bodied citizens should be accorded no treatment different from that accorded to other citizens who did not wear a uniform during the World War. That is an interesting tack to take, and I am not sure that it would fly today. And then, I mean, he's basically making the argument in multiple ways that veterans were not the only people who suffered from the war and who should be compensated for it. And I'm honestly so surprised at that argument coming from FDR. In one sense, the whole concept of like everybody should receive this, not just people who fought in the war. That makes sense coming from FDR. FDR, as I recall, contracted polio and was paralyzed before he would have had the opportunity to enlist in any armed services. So he wouldn't have fought in a war. So he wouldn't know necessarily the psychological toll that war took on people who went to it, that it did not necessarily take the same toll on people who did not. Anyway, so his vetoes caused it to take extra time to get passed, but that's probably not necessarily a bad thing if what he's saying is true. What he's saying, you know, about the economy coming back and the other stimulus packages that were, or bonus packages that were set forward for people, were as available as he says they were. However, I sort of doubt that those things are as true as he suggests they are. They may have, by the numbers, looked okay, but I also know that it's very easy for someone looking at the big picture to discount the large swaths of people who are not affected by such assistance measures. And oftentimes those people who are not affected fall into large categories, such as veterans or African Americans or people who were in poverty before the Depression, and those sorts of things. So it seems like this is a sort of a timely topic to talk about, given the conversations that our current Congress is having about stimulus packages and stimulus checks. And yeah, so FDR, not a communist. Wait, no, he is a communist. Wait. This is all a joke. He's not a communist, but he was fighting for the equality of people after the war. And while I fully agree with him that the people who stayed at home did a lot of solid work and should also be considered, I guess, heroes of the war, they didn't suffer the kinds of things that made it harder for them. They didn't all suffer the kinds of things that made it harder for them to keep a job, like many World War I veterans did. World War II veterans suffered more than World War I veterans for many psychological reasons. But World War I veterans were sort of the first ones that we noticed to have something we called shell shock, which is now commonly referred to as PTSD. And PTSD can be a very hard thing to live with and hold down a job and maintain a healthy relationship with your family and maintain healthy physical exercise and all those things. So just the fact that they came back having not been disabled by the war doesn't mean that they're all fine and dandy going into work. But he wouldn't have known that because that's not something that we really looked at a lot back then. And also it's not something that people really talked about. When they came back from the war, they didn't talk about their psychological issues that kept them from going to work. And probably a lot of them soldiered through, no pun intended, and lived shorter lives because of it, shorter, less healthy lives, because of their belief that they, this was just something they had to do. World War I, man. took up like the first half. I mean, if we think this coronavirus is bad, which we do, the world wars took up easily the first half of the century, the last century. I wonder, and what's interesting about the last pandemic is that it happened sort of in tandem with World War I. So, it's very hard to have a war and do social distancing. Not really a thing. So a lot of people who died were people who were already dying from war. And so it was sort of overshadowed by the war. But if we don't have a world war now, this might be the sort of like the defining event of this century. Certainly this half the century could be. It's hard to know right now though, right? Because it's like, we don't know what's coming down the line. Hopefully we get to Mars. That'd be nice. All right, well, I now talked much longer than I needed to. And it's now 10 o'clock. That means nothing, at least in the state of my day. I don't have much going on. But today is Friday, which means that I will not see you until Monday. I will probably still do Magic Monday on Monday, even though it is Memorial Day. Memorial Day? Yes, Memorial Day. I will probably still do Magic Monday. No promises. If I'm not there, that's why. But see, there's this problem that I have in that when I look at my playlist on my like YouTube studio thing, and I can go through and look at my playlist, my quarantine playlist of videos that I've made, they line up perfectly. There's 5 in a row. And so then it's like every 5 is like the ones on top of each other are the same weekday. It's great. And if I miss a day, if I don't do a live video one day, it doesn't work like that. Because I can't, even if I uploaded a video that day, I don't think it would go, it would work this way. I could try that. Maybe. Anyway, so you will probably see me on Monday. I will probably just do a regular Magic Monday where I open a pack, but Ben will not be at work, so maybe we'll play another game, Ben this time live, if I can convince him. But have a good weekend. Stay safe. I know that this weekend is generally a time, a lot of people are graduating from various schools right now. There's a 6th grade graduation that was big yesterday. And so it's a big time to celebrate and be with family and everything, but make sure you do it safely. And yeah. And maybe do it in a way that supports local business if you can, because they could always use that. As for me and my house, it's 10 o'clock. So we're going to go do 10 o'clock things now. Okay. It's been enjoying a dream. Have a good weekend. Make good choices. Don't do drugs, etc.